morning, everybody. My name is Maddox Pennington. I'm in the Writing Studies program at the Literature Department.
And my name is Alex Briding. I work for AU Core, and so if you submit your syllabi because you teach within the AU Core, I'm one of the guys who reads them.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Hazen, and I'm a professorial lecturer in the biology department. And I actually came up with the idea for this symposium because I was inspired, having not had any experience with this, and wanted to meet people who did have experience with it and force myself to change my syllabus.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah Patterson. I teach journalism in the School of Communication, and I'm really excited to share some tips and tricks with you as to how to make your syllabus more readable, legible, and engaging with your students.
All right. And I'll start us off. All right. Not how I wanted to start here.
It's subtle.
I'll switch that for you.
Okay, thanks. So let's talk about the purpose of a syllabus, just to get us started. Why don't you raise your hand, what's the purpose of a syllabus on campus? Why do you make a syllabus? Yes, one right here.
To let your students know what's expected of them and what they can expect from you.
Expectations, going two ways, for you and for the students. Anyone else? Lacey.
It sets the tone, I think, for the class and hopefully gets them engaged.
Right.
Right from the very beginning.
So it's about engaging them, getting them excited about the course, setting the tone about what it's going to be like, the dynamic among the group. What else? Yes?
It's a roadmap.
A roadmap, like a how-to guide, right? Like it's directions, totally. What else? Who else cares about the syllabus? I just told you I read your syllabus, right? So.
It contains basic information, which is pretty much in all syllabuses, which provides how to get in touch with the writing center, the counseling center, all those different types of things, which I think technically the university wants us to have in all syllabi.
Right, so there's some boilerplate stuff
Right.
about stuff outside of the classroom that might help you in the classroom. Right.
This is ancillary, but I think it also has a bunch of information that's kind of a package of information about that topic for them, so that after they leave your class, even years later, if they say the syllabus, they can look stuff up.
All the dream.
Right? Hey, your syllabus is that good, yeah, which I'm sure it is. Okay, these are all good things. There's a few others. If you think about the institution as a whole and go down through, your classroom and your role as instructor and then how the students view it, we have a pretty diverse amount of purposes. First off, it's, as maybe Lacey might know, as a head of a program, that it's about keeping track, and it's personnel review, right? You have to submit it to your chair, to your head of your department. There's also institutional. So the Office of Institutional Research or AU Core, you're going to submit to them for the middle states accreditation stuff. You always have to submit your syllabus for that. It's also an organizing tool to be used by the instructor. It could be just like a heuristic for you, as well as the contract, the setting expectations, as you said, and a how-to guide, a map of how you're going to actually be successful in the course. And that's really for students to think about. If we were to think about the syllabus in terms of the functionality, think about it functionally, and we took what we previously mentioned, this purposes, we see like three functions really emerge, and you use some of these words already. There's definitely content where you're saying, okay, this is basically the basic stuff about a course. This is this is what you're going to be introduced to. This is what institutional research offices, AU Core, we're interested in this very much, about what is going to be covered in terms of assignments in the course. Then there's expectations, which is absolutely necessary, right? And you can do a lot of expectations or just a few. And then, as Lacey said, really engaging students and getting them motivated to care about the course. This is especially important because this matches what you do in the first day, right? The first day they come in, you introduce yourself, why you care about this topic. You're basically building this world and inviting them in. And that's all about getting their motivation, right? If nothing else happens in the first day of class, but you get them really excited about the topic that you care about, that's awesome. Now, if we were to divvy those functions up into different types of syllabi, and this is the types of syllabi, some of the language you might see in the literature about syllabi in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. You'll see that content-heavy syllabi are often thought of as traditional. And this is, we see these all the time, still on campus. They're generally briefer, and they just introduce the content. They're good because they're the norm, and people know how to navigate them really easily. The bad is that there's no metacognition going on whatsoever. There's no opportunities for the students to really interact with it. There's no opportunities for them to get a sense of who you are. Next would be a contractual syllabus. We see these emerge really in 80s, 90s, but starting in the 70s when higher education expanded greatly, became really litigious, right? And so there's a sort of cover your ass mentality, right? To be honest, right? And what we see is we want to make everything laid out as clear, as contractually as possible, and this like rationalization of authority, and the idea is it's fair, right? It's like we want to reduce caprice. We want to make it so you know all the regulations and rules so that nothing feels arbitrary when you get a bad grade. It's not wrong. The problem is that this is wholeheartedly disenchanting, right? When you focus on rules over the reasoning behind it, it sucks the sort of motivation out of it, which is where we get more engaging type of syllabi, which is maybe the trend now. Sometimes you hear words like student-focused, student-centered. Sometimes those are a little overstated, since it is our authority, it's our classroom. I can't deny it. And we'll go into that now. What makes an engaging syllabus? Well, I'm going to put it in terms of 3 maybe variables, and you can manipulate these variables to create a more engaging syllabus. The first would be playing with the medium. And for example, you could use we'll talk about this a lot today, but using colors and graphics to sort of get people to interest them. If that's your forte, if you're really good at graphic design, then this is like a perfect thing for you. Other ways of using like a wiki or a website. Some people just use like a blogspot sort of thing, back in the day. The next thing, which I love, is thinking about really creatively about how you can engage students to interact with the syllabus. Meaning, maybe leave something empty, and that that on the first day, one of the activities, if there's time for an activity, is to get students to create part of that syllabus with you. And that could just be about, dates and presentation schedules and maybe a reading or two from a list or topics you might want to cover that they decide is really special to them. And that, when you give them the opportunity to create something about the syllabus, they have ownership over part of that course, right? And you can connect it to like the topic itself, right? If you're talking about citizenship in an SBA course, and you're talking about liberal versus Republican citizenship models, and you could have 2 different units and have space for assignments that are crafted to reflect those different ideas about citizenship, or group making. Finally, when we see engaging syllabi is that they focus on the reasoning over the rules. So rather than listing all the things that will lower your grade, which, let's be real, they're important sometimes, right? And they should be written somewhere. Maybe if you're using Blackboard, and on a separate page in Blackboard. But if you focus on why you have, certain rules in the classroom, or why the lessons you've learned as teaching over time, and focus on that in the syllabus, it's going to connect with students a lot more. They're going to see you, which is really important for them, and building that relationship, which you're going to use all semester to keep them engaged. And really, when we think about this, it boils down to format, interaction, and tone, to use Lacey's word from earlier. And we'll play with that for the rest of this session. I'm not sure where I am at time. So looking at some examples, some of you came in a little bit after I passed them out, but there are some packets that I passed out, or you all passed out. And there's 2 types of syllabi on there. The top one, Appendix A, it's listed, is a more graphic, visually pleasing, engaging type syllabus. And the one behind it, right here, yes, is a more traditional, or maybe contractual in some ways, syllabus. And take a gander, notice what piques your interest, what excites you, and what maybe bores you or makes you say, oh, why did I skip that when I was skimming over it, right? Because students are probably going to do the same thing. And this comes from a study out of Bowling Green, a school that does a lot of scholarship of teaching and learning. And they have this same course. There's about, 350 students or so, and they have two different sections. And they gave one section one syllabus, another section this other syllabus, and did a pre and post test about just sort of affect, like their satisfaction with the syllabus, not the course itself, from the beginning to the end of the course, and how they used each part of the syllabus. And what we see, some interesting data. First, really, I'm going to stand up now. Very qualitatively, we compare this contractual syllabus to the engaging syllabus. I can read them all. Some of them, like for the engaging syllabus, I feel as though most syllabi follow the same pattern with office hours, assignment dates, and the grading scale. There's certain information they have to convey, so they can't be too different. I also like that it highlights key information with different colors, text, highlighting, and the use of underlining or bold print. So this is, in those three variables we talked about a second ago, this engaging syllabus really focuses on the format more than the interaction, and doesn't get bogged down too much with the rules. Quantitatively, what we see here is when they're asked, how much are you in, how willing are you to take a course with the same professor in the same department again? And those who are on the edges, meaning they have extreme answers anyways, right? Like, I'll never take a course with this professor again. They barely moved. But the ones in the middle, which is the ones you really want to focus on, because that's where the needle's going to move the most, we see huge, significant differences between those students who had the engaging syllabus and versus the contractual syllabus. And that those who were somewhat interested became way more interested. Those who were somewhat not interested, also became more interested. So finally, a little bit more research about what students are focusing on, because not every component needs to be forefronted or highlighted equally. And we could share these sources with you at the end. At least 70% of students report using syllabus from the first day throughout the rest of the semester. We often think that students never read the syllabus, but it's not true. A lot of research over and over again shows students really do read it. They just don't read every part of the syllabus. And it really depends on which students, right? Freshmen are going to use different things than a senior. A senior doesn't need to know about the Writing Center. They already know about the Writing Center. They've been going there for years. But the freshmen, absolutely. International students absolutely need to know about the Writing Center, right? Also about non-traditional versus traditional students in terms of deadlines and things. Generally, students focus on things related to performance. So the big things are always going to be like the due dates, right? And the grading policies. But again, it depends on what kind of student this is. Yeah. Moving on.
Thanks. Hi, that's me. So now that we have some of the research under our belt, I would like to talk to you about how you can implement some of that, especially with format. I think that's your biggest bang for the buck without having to change too much about the content with your syllabus already. It just comes down to design, really. So before I talk about specific design principles and how you can implement those with your syllabi, I first want to get you in the mindset for this. So first, I'd like you to think about some of the things that you read and just in day-to-day life, and more importantly, some of the things that you don't read. So what are some things that, and you can just shout these out, like what are some things that you encounter throughout your daily lives that you don't read? Could be like emails.
Terms and conditions.
Terms and conditions. Nobody reads terms and conditions. Why? Why don't you read them?
They're boring.
They're boring.
And they're too small. I can't.
It's too small, it's too long.
Probably
it's
don't need them.
big chunks of text, right? All these things.
You're gonna sign it
Yeah,
anyway.
you have to.
You're gonna sign it anyway. So you kind of think about how you're gonna be in the class anyway.
Yeah.
Too long, too big of chunks of text, right? Already we're getting some good feedback here for it. So here's some things I don't read. Number one, I just discovered yesterday as I was taking this screenshot, because I'm always up here in this menu, and as a web designer, don't get me started on how many buttons there are, but Campus news, never read that. I just noticed this for the first time yesterday. What about this?
Did you notice that the top navigation bar is entirely different from the side
Yes,
navigation bar, even
yes.
though the words are the same?
I know, yeah. I could give an entirely different presentation about.
And then I found out they did it on purpose. I was like, something's wrong.
I would really love to
That's a
speak to
feature,
the
not a bug.
portal people, but that's okay. Blackboard. How many people read these announcements? No, never. Why? Because they're red. I don't.
Red means don't read.
Yeah. Also, I don't know why there are 6 steps to
Too much.
go do something. Why is there not just a login box? I shouldn't even have to click login. Anyway, all these things, right? Lease agreement. How many people? I mean, you should read a lease agreement. You should read your mortgage papers. A year ago when I was doing that, I did, and like the title people were like, "Can you wrap this up, just sign?" But are there ways that this could be designed to encourage us to read more thoroughly? And terms and conditions, as we mentioned. Okay, so I think it's helpful to think about the things we don't read and why do we not read them. There's a joke in, because I do web design and web production as a subset of journalism, how do people read online? They don't. Nobody reads online. You skim. You're looking for indicators to direct you to the content that you're interested in. Look at these 2 examples. This comes from a government website that has to deal with readability, encouraging readability in government notifications and announcements and written language. And so we have 2 separate formats for the same content. And without me telling you, I'm imagining that most of you were drawn to the right, correct? Even though it's the same content. And if I had to give you a quick quiz on what the takeaway was here, I imagine that if you read what was on the right, you could tell me some of the effects of lead in drinking water, as opposed to if I had shown you what was on the left and only gave you, 3 seconds for each of these things, right? All we did was shorten the information, make it more digestible, use bullets, bold some words, and that's it. And it makes it much easier to take away. So, when you think about what you read and or what you don't, understand the design that's leading you to read it. Is it bulleted information? Are there headings? Are there links? Is it short paragraphs, short sentences, etc.? And when you're doing that, you're empathizing with your readers. When you produce content and you think about the way that someone is going to digest that content, you're empathizing with your readers, which in the case of your syllabus, are your students. All of that is called UX design, which is another area that I work in. So user experience design. What is the experience that you are giving someone when you produce this content? And specific to this session, when you're producing a syllabus. So how can you implement some of this material into your syllabus? Number 1, I would say try something other than Times New Roman. Just try it. The world will go on, I promise. You can use it, it's a great font, there are many good reasons to use it, but there are a lot of other good fonts out there too. So maybe just see what happens when you select all and try something else, okay? And if you don't like it, you can go back. Here I'm going to take an example from the journalism department. So I have an example syllabus from spring 2019, journalism ethics, and throughout the next few minutes here, we're going to make some slight changes, okay? So if you're looking at it here, we've got Times New Roman, probably looks like syllabi that you're used to seeing, correct? Now, empathize with your students, your readers. If you were to receive 5 of these in a semester, every semester that you're at this university, chances are they look like everything else, and like terms and conditions, because it looks like everything else, you're used to seeing it, you probably don't read it, right? Or you skim it, we do know that they read it, but for the sake of argument here. Okay. Ooh, wow. All I did was change the font to Proxima Nova. If you're interested in nerding out about typography and fonts, find me after, and we can talk much more about this. But all I did was change it to Proxima Nova. Okay, nothing like drastic yet, but maybe there's just like 2% more interest here in when I look at this now. Okay, number 2, especially with syllabi, learn the value of space, breathing room. There is breathing room in design. It's called white space, but there are some simple things you can do to take the same content. I'm not asking you to change your content. I'm asking you to change the format. Break up your paragraphs. Those long paragraphs of 10 sentences each, break them up. A paragraph can be, now I know, journalism, a paragraph can be 1 sentence, so we can argue about that later, but break up those paragraphs into 2 or 3 sentences each. Change your line heights. This is a space between lines. If you bump it up a little bit, it creates more breathing room. 1.25x in between instead of single line spacing. Consider your line lengths. This is the amount of characters or words per line. There is research behind, and it's about 60 to 70 characters per line is the ideal line length. How many words or characters are in a particular line before your eye has to go down to the next line. Too short, and you're doing newspaper style. Too long, it's like, come all the way back and take a big breath and then go all the way over again, right? All right, here we have one paragraph I stole. This paragraph actually in comparison isn't too bad, but it's a little long for me. How can we make this a little bit easier to digest? Here we go. I took the same content. I didn't change a word. Didn't reorder anything. But now I've broken up. I took the important part about you get 1 excused absence for this, you get 2 for that, and 3 for that. Bolded those words, put it in a list. Guess what? Now as a student, I understand that a lot better. And I also can skim this in a way that makes more sense. So that's all I did there. And I decreased the line length by actually smushing it, making the margins bigger, which brings everything in, and that decreases the line length. So we don't have to read quite as far over to the right to do that. Headings should look like headings. Here's an example, not from a syllabus, but naturally, again, same content, I think you're drawn to the one on the right. Why do our headings, what's different about it? Well, we just have like bigger, bolder headings, and they help direct us. They help direct the eye and organize the content better so that we can digest it better. In terms of our example syllabus, I found one heading further down that was part of the boilerplate information that did not look like the other headings that were part of it, so I separated it out, made it all caps. All caps is, you don't always want to use all, it can feel like screaming a lot of the time, but I made it consistent. If nothing else, consistency throughout your syllabus as well. And again, I broke up some of the paragraphs here to make it a little bit more legible. And then I would encourage you to try a color, just one. Just try a color, any color, and sprinkle it throughout your syllabus, and it will help draw the eye to particular points of interest. So here we have the top of our redesigned syllabus, and if I wanted to do something very simple, I could just, oh, and also, as an addendum, I also have a grid of our dates, assignment projects, and percent of grade. Here are 2 places that I could easily drop in some color, and it wouldn't require too much. So I might be able to just give it a bigger, bolder title, and use like a block of color behind it, and in a table, I might do something like that. None of this is like mind-blowing or revolutionary, but I promise you do a little bit of these things, and it helps people to engage with, flow through, skim your syllabi in a manner that not only excites them, the students, but also they find it's just easier to digest some of the information, and I think they maintain it a little bit better too. Here's an example of one of my own syllabi from a class called Storytelling with Emerging Media, which is fun and really an excuse for my students and I to play around and experiment with AR and VR and Snapchat and 360 video and all these things. And so to get them into the mindset to experiment with those media, I completely redesigned one of my syllabi to have this kind of format, which I think I can click through here. All right, for the sake of the presentation, I won't. But you can click through. We have a link to the presentation at the end, and you can look through the rest of it there. And you'll see some of the same principles. So not too much text on one page, color used throughout, hopefully a little bit more interesting design and layout. And I almost couldn't believe the first time I taught this class, how just by passing this out, already the students were like wide-eyed and excited about doing a course like this because it looks and feels different than everything else they're used to seeing. You don't have to go that far, but it's just...
Do you print them in color?
I do. I'm not a green class, so don't report me. I print it in color because I'm like, well, this is more fun, so here you go. But I give them a digital PDF as well as part of a website that I do with that course. Okay, some tools for you. If you're making small changes, like the ones that I mocked up here with that journalism ethics class, you can still use Word or Apple Pages, Google Docs. All of the changes that I did in those examples were in Google Docs. So you just have to be a little bit savvy, but you don't have to do anything crazy here. If you're looking for bigger changes or layout, like the one that I use in storytelling with emerging media, then you're looking at something like Adobe InDesign, where you're actually producing layout. And if you wanted to do alternative formats, something like WordPress or Squarespace or even Wix are all pretty easy to use if you wanted to have a digital, more interactive syllabus that you could distribute through a URL, which I find, I usually do a mix of these things, and the digital format is really nice, especially when you're making changes, because then you can just make a change, let the students know, and everything is, follow what's on the website because it's always the most accurate. And then I would just, in order to kick it off over to Maddox, I would say sketching might be a way that you could do some alternative formats too.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Would anybody like some paper to take notes on or a brightly colored pen to do it in? Anybody need more paper? Anybody? Okay. See, everybody else printed their preparation, and I just had to remake it. So Jeremiah was very soothing in telling you don't have to go crazy or rethink everything or change a lot. I am going to encourage you to go crazy and rethink everything. Maybe not by Monday, maybe not this semester, but I do want to encourage you to make a little more room in your syllabi for things that you wouldn't have thought should go in there at the beginning of your teaching career. Can I hear some of the departments that are represented here? I know writing is here. What other departments are you guys from? Hi.
Word languages and culture.
Word languages and culture?
Specs.
Oh, Fred? Okay. Sorry. You're too loud, Maddox. I could probably just, okay. Words, languages, communications? What else?
Cultures. Word
Cultures.
Economics.
Economics?
History.
History. I feel like it's going to stress out economics the most, everything I'm about to do. Okay, so 3 steps I'm going to invite you to go on when you're trying to just fix up your syllabus are try brainstorming and mind mapping, then do some syllabus design, then go into how to restructure your actual assignment pages. So some of the stuff I'm going to show you may be a little stressful. It's okay. You only have to do of it as much as you want. But if my brain works this way, odds are some of your students' brains work this way as well. So why do I do this? Because it represents the values of my courses, which are all writing courses. And I'm trying to encourage my students to go from emerging writers who write once in a high-stakes thing, it's due the next day, and it's 2 in the morning, and that's when they write. So it's very writer-centric because it's just stream of consciousness, and their subtext is, oh God, let me finish this. It's isolated, and it's dependent on stress. So those of us who are experienced writers may still be stressed, but we have a process that we trust. And we know that we can do writing over and over again, we do it over time, ideally, and we think about our reader. And it's also a social process. This doesn't mean we sit out with our friends and our laptops and shoot the shit when we write, but we get people's eyes on it before we show it to anybody else, right? Students, especially the freshmen that I tend to work with, are terrified of people seeing their bad writing. So much of my course is just about comfort in being messy and experimenting and trying stuff out. This is an example of how I start projects. You do not have to start projects this way, but it can be really helpful to just dump everything that you want to put in your course on a table. Whether you use Post-its, I have literal Legos up here for later when we make you do this. This is what it looks like when I start, where I'm just trying to figure out what are my goals, what are my interests, what are some of the things I know. It starts out really messy. This is phase 1. Then I go through and I organize with a sense of hierarchy. Okay, what are the most important things and what branches off of that? When I can't think of a word for something, I draw it because I just want to keep moving. And then I organize it even more simply because I think about what is the rhetorical situation that I'm going into. This happened to be a book project that I was like, okay, this is what it would look like if it was a book, but I have 2 weeks, so what if it was an essay? What would I talk about? And I had to just take things out. But in order to know what to take out, I had to generate a huge list of things. This is the equivalent of dumping all your Legos on the table, and then you figure out what Legos you want, and then you figure out what you're building. I don't show this to students except as a process tool. This is how phase 3 looks like when I'm planning my syllabus. So this is my Native American Studies course that I'm going to be doing. It's a Writing 101 course, and I want students to know if I show them this, it's because they overlap the assignments. They're going to have to think about things more than one at a time. This is the creative writing course that I'm teaching for the first time, and I had to figure out, okay, what are we going to be reading, what are the takeaways, and what are they going to be doing? So it's just thinking about the relationship between the elements in your class. I don't know if your students in your disciplines have this problem, but with writing students, they have a really hard time panning back from their draft and not just thinking of it like sentence by sentence by sentence. This, I think, pushes them to think in terms of big concepts and their relationships to each other, which is where there's more room for their own thought anyway. If you say, okay, here's an idea from this writer, and here's an idea from this writer, and then you say, don't write anything down, just draw. What is their relationship? Do they go together? Do they oppose each other? And then what do you think? There's room for them to come up with stuff in a way there isn't if you say, okay, give me a paragraph, and then another paragraph, and then another paragraph. This is how I design assignments. I recreate this on the board as I talk to students. I am not an art person. I am not a graphic design person. It's not pretty like Jeremiah's stuff. But that's actually good for my students because it shows them, A, it doesn't have to be pretty. When you're in the middle of process, it should be a little messy. And it gives us a visual shorthand, right? This is the text that they're reading. They're going to pull out 2 key concepts. They're going to apply it to another text. Because I draw this in front of them, they understand that at a glance. Right now, it may look like somebody who should perhaps seek help. But when students see me do it, they're able to then do that themselves. And I think this is going to be a useful tool for you all. When you're thinking about your assignments, what are the elements that are most important? And how do they relate to each other? Because if it's not a most important element, and you don't know how it relates to the rest of the elements, it might not be something that you need in your class. So this is how my syllabus tends to turn out after I strip things away. I do want to encourage them to go back and look at things, so I use memes. I have a literal map to my office because it's in the shack on the back of the gym, and otherwise they don't find it. I used to have a wall of text for course policies, but they don't read them, as you've heard from the research and the design folks. So now I think about how my syllabus is going to interact with Blackboard. Because the syllabus is what you need to know on the first day. Here are all the things. But they actually don't need a full summary of every assignment on the first day. They need to know when is that due. And so that's why I put all of my assignment description on Blackboard, where they are a little more likely to read it. Not all of my assignment design, I'll say that, because for me, I like having everything in one place. But for a freshman who just got here, having their whole semester in their hands is very stressful. For me, it's very comforting, because I've thought of it already. For them, it's like, oh, I have to do this all right now. These are how I work with the learning outcomes. I've remade this infographic a couple times, and this is what I'm giving them this semester. Rather than a couple different versions I've tried before, I have a brief summary of what each assignment is, and then a breakout of what the homework components are going to be. So that they'll see all of these listed as individual assignments on Blackboard, but they can go in one place and say, okay, when all of this is done, the semester's over. Great news. This also helps them see what are the small elements and then what are the big elements. It gives them a sense of proportion and how these assignments work together. And when they have questions, I can explain, yes, this is why I'm making you do all these things in this way. This is how I used to do assignment pages. You'll notice it does have a picture. It does have some headings. I nailed it, right?
Yeah, that's good.
But it's also like a wall of text. It does have readings at the bottom that are set apart. But after the first day when I explain this is how I refer to this assignment. I give them, okay, here's your exhibit, here's what you're going to talk about, here's the types of sources you need to find, here's the conversation between texts, and here's you. So I realized there was an inconsistency in my own class presentation, because on the first day I give them this, which suggests, oh, this is important, learn this way of reading, but then whenever I'm in the mess, like working on an essay, this is how I think. So I finally started this semester. This took some brain doing. I've decided to combine the things. So there's less text, I'm referring back to the learning outcomes, and I just used the little call-out features on PowerPoint to recreate my slightly deranged looking diagrams into a much more, I think, stable, readable by someone who doesn't live in my brain format. So I'm hoping, this is my first time trying out this handout, but I'm hoping that having the consistency of these elements are on your first handout, and I'm going to recreate them in class will be helpful. I also, taking a page out of Alex's book, left a blank space. This is the back of that handout. So I still get to have my epigraph. I'm a writer. I want my handouts to read like a piece of writing. I always want there to be these like very moving epigraphs and thoughts about like, what is creative writing? They don't read them. So I'm hoping that by putting it on the back and pairing it with a box where I want them to just brainstorm, what are some examples of Native American representation you could review? They will A, read it, and B, remember that it's there. This is another one where I give them a brief description of what the assignment is, how it relates to our learning outcomes. I haven't really set it on my readings yet, but I want them to think about research like this, as a series of sort of connecting constellations. And again, another brainstorming document. And some of you might feel resistant to worksheets because this is college. But because this is going to be part of the syllabus, they're going to have it with them all semester. So if they see something cool, as we're talking, they can record it here and come back to it. And it's a little bit of a safe space. This isn't an essay, this is just a worksheet. I just have to fill this handout, I just have to write down some things. I don't have to know what I want to talk about yet. which is of course my goal for them as writers, to not know what they want to say until they finish saying it. This is my gateway drug into graphic design. When I was in my MFA program, when I was editing in a workshop, I would say, I think you need to just take a 10th comb and go all the way through the essay. You'd be like, what? What? This encourages revision as a process, rather than proofreading. Because you pick one concept, a big picture, a big comb, if you will, and you go all the way through the draft just fixing that thing. And then you take a break, and you have a snack, and you go for a walk, and then you come back. And you pick a smaller thing. You go all the way through the draft, just looking for that thing. I do that with my students because I do that in my work. I don't know how many of you have opportunities in your syllabus to talk about your work, but see if you can find some. Students want to know that this discipline matters and is real, and odds are you're a little more excited about your work than maybe Econ 101. No offense. Then, if you're excited about it, you can share that with them. And this is one of the ways that I do it. I get real geeky about it. And I am who I am, and I have to be that as a teacher. So, the goals of having a more creative and flexible approach, and maybe including a little mind mapping, a little sketching, a little doodling, some icons, some memes, promotes low stakes engagement. Where they can do it and it's going to be okay. It's not stressful because it's just low stakes, you're just practicing. It also demonstrates multimodality, that some people think primarily in words and some people maybe in pictures. It accommodates neurodiversity in a really great way. It provides transparency. It shows them why these elements are in the assignments that they're getting. It emphasizes process, something that you do over time, not the night before it's due, and it cultivates metacognition. A syllabus is a rhetorical situation. It has rules, but they're not arbitrary, but they're chosen. They're a result of a lot of people's choices. And I think the more that we can make that transparent to our students, the less they feel like, oh, I'm phony, I'm a loser, I don't belong here. These are all these rules everybody knows. You're like, no, I made this up. I made this up based on department guidelines, but I made this up. I start on the first day of class. We're going to do a little bit at the end where we talk about our day one practices. If you want to have some of these values embedded in your course, how do you kick that off? But one of the things I do is after they come in, I say this classroom is a rhetorical situation. For example, how did you know where to sit? None of you sat up here. It makes them think, I live in a world that already has rules that I already understand. And so then we go into the syllabus and we say, okay, what do I value based on this? What are the parameters of this rhetorical situation? So we've heard the science part, we've heard the design part, we've heard the overgrown 5-year-old part. Now we're going to see another faculty member who's just like you, who just tried this out, maybe for the first time. And Rebecca's going to tell us what she liked, what she used, and how it went. And then we're going to make you do it in a very low stakes way.
Thank you. It's not fair that we are so accustomed to projecting our voice across rooms and then given a microphone.
Told not to scream into it,
I'm
my
not,
bad.
I'm not accustomed to this either. Okay, so as I said earlier and as Maddox just indicated, I come to this as a newbie. I am not familiar with design elements, and it actually took me quite a bit of time to do what I'm going to show you. And so in some ways I feel like I felt last week when I was preparing for this thinking, I'm an imposter, what am I doing on this panel? But then I reminded myself that during our planning session, Maddox and Jeremiah said, no, this is why people are here, to see what this process is like, going from not being comfortable to making changes and getting students excited about your work. So the first thing that I did, and the way that I got inspired to to go on this adventure, was just reading an article actually that we will provide for you, but there are lots of articles out there about syllabus design, just Google. I think one of the things you told me to look up was infographic syllabi or something like that, and there are just so many things just to plant seeds and get some ideas, and it turns out there is a broad spectrum of where people are at on this journey out there as well. The first thing I did was I just found a template online. I went to Microsoft's, they have a website with a bunch of templates for newsletters. I just grabbed one of those and was like, all right, I'm just gonna plug stuff in. This is gonna be so easy. And with this idea, one of the things we're going to encourage you to do later today, I wanted to plug things in a way that prioritized things in my syllabus in terms of what sequence do I have things in. So I realized in some of my other syllabi, I had things on the first page that it's like, this course isn't about me, why is my name the first thing up there? Things like that, and then also making sure that the presentation of those elements represented what I thought was most important, and then also cutting some things out and adding some new things in. So here's an example of a syllabus that I inherited here, and I think the person who I inherited it from somebody else, and it's great. It's got a lot of excellent content in it, and I think that how many people here have like inherited a syllabus from somebody else, or taken a syllabus from like some other class that they had taken and kind of revamped it. And I think this kind of like historical trajectory of accumulation of these lines, and it's just like, this is how it's always been done, so I'm supposed to like stay in this box. And this workshop and meeting with my co-panelists here made me feel like I had permission to go outside of that and change things around. And so this is still a work in progress, my oceanography syllabus here, but I wanted to try to implement some of these design aspects. And so I made the most important thing on the page, like what is oceanography, why am I here, what am I going to be doing here, and understanding kind of this really nice cartoon that kind of illustrates that it's an interdisciplinary course. You're not just going to be studying whales the whole time, right? And then there's my information and the nuts and bolts of what they need to know is here, but it's not like, this is all about me and you need to focus on me. Again, going back to the idea of a student-focused syllabus. I also put in a table of contents here, which I really like. This is something my colleague Sarah and I are teaching the Human Anatomy and Physiology course this semester, and she had done a bunch of like really cool revamped things, like putting more images in and putting our pictures in, putting pictures of the textbooks we're going to be using in. And she was kind enough yesterday when I messaged her and I was like, I'm doing this panel, do you mind if I play around with our syllabus a little bit? She was kind enough to say, go for it. I'm going to pass around, I only made 3 copies because I didn't want to waste too much paper. But if you wanted to look at an example of kind of some of the things, I did this all yesterday just to give you an idea of how, and I was holding a 7-month-old the whole time I was doing it.
So one-handed.
Difficulty on hard.
Yeah. So it did take the better part of the day, but I was able to go from this to this, like a very linear format. If you go through the rest of this syllabus, it is all just like text, not a lot of bullet points. Again, it's I think what Sarah had inherited from the person before her, and so on. And I have a PDF I can pull up if you guys want to see more of that later. So some of the things that I encountered that I found frustrating, I'll share with you. The most difficult aspect was the template that I downloaded itself. I was like, this template looks so easy. I'll just like, where it says title here, I'll just get rid of that and put in my title, and thought I can cut and paste a bunch of stuff while holding a baby, no big deal. But it turns out that the template that I downloaded, and they have a lot of like different rules that I'm not used to. I'm used to like working in PowerPoint, working in Word, and I can move things around with my clicker easily. But then sometimes when you download these templates, they have all these like rules that I don't understand, where things are like grouped and there's like hidden formatting, and I couldn't get rid of some of the pages for some reason. And I'm sure that maybe Jeremiah would have been like, dummy. This is a really easy thing to do. But for me, I found it was just outside of what my understanding of how to use a point and click kind of program. So I was thinking, if Jeremiah could see this, he'd be like, this is like a Frankenstein document. Yes, I was able to create a PDF that I can hand around to you, and you'd be like, oh, that's nice. But if you went into it, the nuts and bolts, it would probably fall apart if you opened it in a different version of Word. The other aspect of it is that cutting and pasting for many hours on end can get pretty boring after a while, and especially hard if you have other things you're trying to do. But those are the frustrating elements. But the stuff I'm really pumped about in this new version of the syllabus is I just think the design looks a lot sexier, and I think there are, like, if you have little nuggets of information that you can kind of like plant in your students' mind, like the version that Alex shared at the beginning, for example, the one from Tona, where it's got like here's like a little tidbit of something you'll learn in the course that's kind of like what's your appetite for what you learn. I think that can be really powerful if you can put things like that in there. And again, like I said before, demoting my role as a professor, of course that's important, but I thought I was really excited about making it more about the course and less about me. As I said before, I really like having a table of contents in there so that students can easily find the things that they're looking for, and not just feel like they're plowing blindly into this document. And for those of you who have the PDF in front of you that I handed out, there was some clarity. This whole workshop is about both creativity and clarity, and there are some clarity things that I added in. One was like a pie chart to show you here is how your grade will be partitioned out over the semester. Like here's what it looks like. Here's how much your exams count for. Here's how much the quizzes count for, just so they can kind of like get a mental picture ahead of time where they want to spend their time and attention. And then also another idea that I got from Maddox during the planning session that I love is on one of the last pages, there is an interactive thing where it's like calculate your grade here, and then it has like here's how much things, here are the things, here are how much those things are worth, put what you got, here's how, so it asks the students from day one to start interacting with that syllabus and realize that they are in control of their own grade, right? And that also created this like kind of repetition from like I'd already detailed out what the students needed to worry about for their grade, but then it just repeated it and will hopefully help drive that home for their attention later in the semester. And then I won't go into this too much, but again, breaking out the text by theme and making it non-linear made me feel a lot better about the document. And then at the end, I don't know if people teach lab courses, but we had originally had like a lecture syllabus, there's like a lecture schedule and then a lab schedule separately, but these students, we want to make these things be integrated. So if you do teach courses that have a lab or have some sort of like extra thing on it, I was really excited about synthesizing those together so they feel like a cohesive unit. Okay, sorry, I already spoke about that, got ahead of myself, about Maddox's idea. And so, with that, this is our transition into, so you've heard about my experience, and now we'd like to transition to the workshop portion. Hopefully some of you either brought your syllabi with you or like have them in your brain so that you can think about what things you want to prioritize. And in case you're wondering, like Maddox said, we brought Legos and Play-Doh, and we recognize that it might be hard to figure out how you're going to use Play-Doh to create a new syllabus, but we really brought it to give you this feeling that anything can happen. And you, like low stakes, this is a mental playground for reconfiguring something like that linear document that you may have inherited from other people. We encourage you, if you brought a paper copy of it, tear it apart and figure out how you want to restructure it. We have giant sticky notes over here if you want to make graphical cartoons or concept maps the way that Maddox encouraged you. And I think that is this your slide? And did you want to say more about
that's
the workshop
mine.
part of it? Okay.
I'm so flattered that you thought it was Jeremiah's. So yeah, I would just love for you each to take like 15 minutes and just try messing something up. Like it's okay if you want to think, okay, none of this is for the spring. Okay. None of this is for the spring. If this is for the fall, that's totally fine. Put it in the future. Put it in 2023. But think of something that you've been doing the same way for a long time and consider, how does a student look at this? Do I want to just map out on that piece of paper how I could frame it differently? What do I want them to do with these tools? Or what are the elements? And feel free to come grab pens, papers, Post-its. We've got the giant boards, work together. Ask us questions. We're going to be sort of circulating. So please take like 10, 15 minutes and just play around, and then we'll come back together and talk about it. Thank you. So how was that? Can I get a couple words? How was that little thought experiment? Good? Fun? Fun? Yay, Bruce. Anything else? Was it stressful? Did anybody get like a little hot on your collar? A little? It's okay. It took me, like the things that I produced today, this is my 3rd year at AU, and I'm finally like, okay, I'm gonna do all of these. So it's okay, baby steps. Try it out with one assignment handout. Or keep giving me your materials, but just practice drawing stuff during class. I mean, I can't even finish a sentence without having to draw something. So we wanted to wrap up, before opening the floor for your questions, we wanted to also just run through, how do we do this stuff on day 1? So for me, I run class on a Google Doc that I invite everybody to. And then at the top, it has kind of the features of my syllabus. Can you click to the next? I think there's one more, right? Did I delete it? Oh, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one. So I have a Google Doc where I have kind of the highlights of the syllabus with links. I've also linked in the presentation an example if you want to look at one, and a link to my current in-progress syllabi. So that's the nerve center. Every day we spend most of our time there. If I need announcements there, it all lives there. And for some students, that's a big adjustment because they maybe just used paper in high school. Becca, did you want to do your Jeopardy? Is that yours or someone else?
Yeah. And so when we were talking about how to encourage students to kind of like stay or first get engaged with the syllabus on the first day, one of the things I said that I do is I make a Jeopardy game for them where it's kind of acts like an icebreaker too. So I'll have them get in groups on the first day, give them all the syllabus, give them a chance to kind of look through, figure out where things are, and talk about the important points, and then I have them play this Jeopardy game. So it's got like time and effort, assignments and classroom dynamics, policies, schedules and due dates, things like that. So, and it just sets the stage for a collegial atmosphere where it's again a low stakes kind of engagement with the syllabus. And then another thing I do is just throughout the semester, I make sure that at least once a week, at the beginning of class or at some point during the class, I pull the syllabus up in front of them and say, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, this is what's due soon, just to remind them that this is our roadmap, as we were talking about earlier. So,
Did you guys want to weigh in on your day 1 stuff? If not, we can just get their questions. Go ahead.
Just kidding.
So, what has changed for you, and what is one thing that you could try this semester, which starts Monday? Tuesday. It doesn't have to be for your first assignment. It could be for like a later assignment, but just like simmering in the back of your brain. One thing that's changed, one thing you're going to try. Can we hear from you? Yeah.
So, in my syllabus, I had So in the current version of my syllabus, I had one section that was learning outcomes, and then a separate section that listed the assignments. So what I think I'll do is do a little info, a little box next to each assignment with here's what learning outcome is for the assignment.
Yes.
Oh, they're going to enjoy it.
Metacognition.
yeah.
Anybody else?
You could even make them figure out what learning outcomes
Totally.
turn into a game.
Becca says turn it into a game, make them figure out what learning outcomes is. I do that too, especially now that I have the infographic. I'm like, what are we doing? Anybody else? One thing?
I teach documentary filmmaking, and yet my syllabi are so incredibly boring. And I have this treasure trove of images and everything that I can utilize, so my format will definitely change. I'm very inspired to make it visually interesting. So thank you.
Take your work to work with me.
I'm deleting a lot of text. Paragraphs that I'm like, they don't really need to read this.
I'll just link it out.
But I can
Yeah.
The other thing is I'm doing a little bit of, like maybe this is journalistic, I should talk to the journalists. But like kind of important stuff at the top.
Yay.
I keep pushing, like I basically have appendices at the bottom that I don't really expect them to read, but they can consult. I still want that in there, but I'm kind of trying to like top half. I want to
With like rubrics if you want.
push that and bring those back up.
You could get
Prioritizing above the fold. Am I right, journalism?
That's right. Don't bury the lead.
Anybody else got one thing? If you were to teach a class, what's one thing you would take away from, like, strategy you would go into planning with?
Oh,
You came to pen.
I think that like by having a journalistic approach, it really breaks information up and also like incorporating bullet points that like really helps for, because I'm an entrepreneurial learner, so I
Any questions?
Maddox, if you don't mind me calling you out, there was an excellent question during the workshopping part. Yes, thank you.
Well, as you may be aware of, that all our syllabus has to be accessible, and I think there's a big problem in terms of doing all this fancy stuff in the Word document, but then you will not be able to make it accessible at the end, and then you have to go back to what you had previously, or to some degree. So that is the problem. Like, you know, all these pictures and stuff like that, you cannot, I mean, unless you are really good in making documents accessible, you know, that's a big constraint at this point, I see.
That's a really good point. What I've done before, because I teach a disability studies 101 class sometimes, it's a writing 101 class, is I'll have my faculty version that has all the bells and whistles, and then I'll have the student version, but then I also just keep all that text, so that I just have one plain text version that I can give them as either a Word doc or a PDF.
But can you have that? You can have two versions?
Well, because I only send it to the students who want it. Because I have the master one that I only have to fix, and then it's a process of just taking it away. Yeah, it is a little bit of a hurdle, but like accessibility sometimes requires that, you know, extra bit of lifting.
Also by digitizing, by digitizing a syllabus, you know, you can make use of the technology that's built into a computer or in browsers, right? So a lot of browsers will have, you know, text to whatever speech, or they can magnify in if they want to just focus on something and get rid of the kind of extraneous stuff to make it more accessible to some people. Alternatively, Adobe Acrobat has like a built-in like accessibility checker tool, and so when we get proposals in, oftentimes for AU Core, we run it through that because we have people on our committees, faculty that need you know, accessibility, higher accessibility. So yeah.
I'll also say that adapting a process of like sketching assignments as you go reaches a lot of types of learners that are not reached by even like the most succinct bullet points. Particularly if you have English language learners that are in your class or immersed in an English language class for the first time, being able to just draw out concepts has saved a lot of one-on-one conferences. Other questions?
Thank you. I wonder if Jeremiah, you could give us a really nutshell tutorial about fonts.
Sure.
Serifs? No
There are
serifs.
serifs and sans serif. Okay, one of the resources I have, this is a good moment to plug. We have one link for you to take away today, and then you can access everything. And it's a bit.ly link. So I had it up here, but I think maybe I changed the presentation just before we started, and I think it was already downloaded. It's a bit.ly link. So the URL is bit, this is all lowercase, bit.ly, so that's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/AFC19, that stands for Antern Conference 19, syllabus, AFC19 syllabus. So bit.ly/AFC19 syllabus. If you go there, you're going to get a Google Doc that compiles all of these resources. So lots of links for you, links to articles we were talking about, links to our own syllabi. I've given you a link to one of my websites that I use for the Storytelling with Emerging Media class. One of my links, I say all this to say, one of my links is a website called fontpair.co, and it encourages you, or it helps you rather, to pair two fonts together. So it's a website that takes Google Fonts. If you didn't know, Google Fonts is a repository of hundreds of free open source web fonts that you can also download to use on your own computer. And if you don't know what to do with all of those, if you're overwhelmed by, if you're a Times person and you want to break out from that, if nothing else today, maybe you want to use a different font. So if you're a Times person, you want to break out from that but don't know where to go, try fontpair.co, which is one of the links that I give you in my own section of resources on that page. And it will give you two fonts that go well together. Here's one that works well for headings, here's one that works well for body fonts. And you can just scroll through there and be like, oh, I like that pair, okay? And then use it. So that would be a really easy way to mix it up so that you're not using Times all the time.
I'm just
like
going
Times Old Roman.
Also, I'm remembering that I went to an accessibility and inclusion conference last year, and one of the things they talked about was that some fonts are, studies have shown that some fonts are more accessible to people with learning disabilities. So sometimes the serifs like throw people off. I believe Arial and Calibri may have been some of the ones, but don't quote me on that. But it might be something you want to look up if you are trying to make your syllabus more accessible to people with learning disabilities.
There's also a specific like dyslexia-friendly font that somebody's made that I cannot remember. What is it called?
It's called Comic Sans,
Yeah.
actually.
Ah, I like that one.
And if you know anything about fonts, Comic Sans is kind of like the joke of the font industry.
Love it.
And we all hate on it, but Comic Sans actually has been proven to be much more legible to people who have dyslexia.
That's cool.
Because every letter is different.
Yes.
The D's and the B. Yeah.
Yep.
Ah, yeah.
So,
Shape.
food for thought.
Other questions?
We have time for maybe one more.
Rita, did you have one more question? Oh,
No, I was trying to look up that
gotcha.
link, but it wasn't working, so I think
It should be all lowercase, and I'm not sure.
it's LY.
Yeah.
bit.ly/AFC19 syllabus.
Did it right up top.
Did it work for other people? I just used
Yes.
it earlier.
Okay, great.
You said everything in lowercase?
Yeah.
But I should
The BB.
It
Okay.
does matter. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. And please get in touch with us if you have any questions after the workshop.
Please show us your Google syllabus.
Yeah.
Thank you.